The college basketball season is over, a quarter in the books. All of the preseason tournaments are done. We are easing our way into conference play. And that means it is time to, in earnest, kick off the scouting season for the 2025 draft. Welcome to Chucking Darts, a podcast of informed, rigorous, reckless, harmless, speculative, and fun predictions about the game we love. You can call me Chuck. This is episode, I believe, number 217. Episode number 216 was early season NBA episode with the great Mike Gribanoff at MikeGrib8 on Twitter, and same for his Patreon, MikeGrib8. We talked about, at the time, the two of the great, I guess, sort of pleasant semi-surprises, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Houston Rockets, the sort of draft lesson and team building lessons to learn from both of those teams. And then we ended the episode a bit on draft philosophy and how each one of our philosophies are kind of shaping up. That was meant to lead into a part 2 episode, which I still intend on doing with Mike. But as he said on Twitter recently, that he had a bit of a health scare, and so he's taking it easy for the time being. Get well soon, Grib. You know, Grib is phenomenal. Anyone who listens to me probably knows who Grib is and how influential he's been for everyone the last, decade in the space. So Grib's fantastic. Follow him, support his Patreon. But until I get back to recording that second episode with him, we've got some college basketball to cover. My man, Brian Geisinger, the preeminent ACC analyst in this entire great nation, it's my opinion, and deep friend of the show, comes on here every March. He came on here last year preseason to talk about the ACC. We discussed some two little-known prospects named Carlton Carrington, who went by the nickname Bub, and this really interesting wing named Ryan Dunn on Virginia, who was allergic to shooting. Now, all these months later, look where we are, and we are starting with the ACC again. I'll get my ACC jokes off in a moment. But before I do, Brian, owner of the Brian Geisinger Substack, which is incredible. Everyone should subscribe to that. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on. And just wanted to briefly mirror your thoughts for Mike. He is one of the best, maybe the best in this space. I am on a monthly basis surprised like an NBA team hasn't snapped him up yet. I think he's one of the smartest scouting people that puts out like publicly available scouting stuff. I've learned an insane amount from him over the years. So just wanted to also, send up a flare and say get well soon too. And he's been tweeting a little bit more recently, so I've been enjoying
Yeah, you
seeing.
can't. Grib's a machine. You can't
Yeah,
stop
so
him.
it's been good to see that back on the timeline. But yeah, doing well. Obviously it's a rocky season for the ACC thus far, but there's still a lot of interesting stuff I think to touch base on. As we sort of like it's gonna calm down here for a little bit. Back half of December is always like a little bit quieter for the college hoop season, but knowing January is right around the corner, there's it's about to be a bad dash here once the calendar
Yeah.
flips to
I mean,
25.
this is what the ACC does. It's like a great running bit this entire 2020s decade. Is
Hmm.
that, or I guess you can go back to 2019 because Virginia won the national title then. But like they sent 3 teams to the Elite Eight last year. I don't
Hmm.
know if the whole country is like a memory hold DJ Burns and the North Carolina
Yeah.
State Wolfpack. That seems like a very long time ago. What a year 2024 has been in whatever direction you want to define it.
Yeah.
But the Clemson Tigers and the Duke Blue Devils all made the Elite Eight last year. NC State went to the Final Four. The year before, well, let's see. Who made the final? I know someone made the Final Four in 2023. Who made the Final Four in 2020?
Miami.
That's right. How can I forget?
Yeah,
Jordan Miller. Shouts to
Jordan
Jordan Miller.
Miller. Yeah.
Shout to
Yeah.
Los Angeles Clippers rotation mainstay, Jordan Miller. Wooga Poplar and the boys.
Yeah.
And then in 2022,
Isaiah Wong, who's getting minutes
that's
occasionally
right.
for the Charlotte Hornets right now,
That's
as they
right.
deal with just a whole barrel of injuries right now for the Hornets,
And
unfortunately.
RIP Buzzbeat, your former Hornets podcast. That was phenomenal. And before we get into like guys naming dudes for the
Yeah.
ACC over the last couple of years, Why don't you tell people a bit more about your Substack, how frequently you're updating it, and what
Yeah.
people can look forward to on that?
Yeah, at bgeisinger.substack.com, which has the title Split the Action. I'm trying to put up, 1 to 2 posts per week. Right now, they're reflecting a lot. I just started this probably in July or August. Right now, the posts are sort of trends that I'm keeping an eye on. A lot of like film statistical analysis. My guess is once the season ends and we get closer to the draft, it's going to be more sort of like scouting
Hmm.
stuff and whether that's for the transfer portal or for the draft. There'll be a lot of that. But right now, it's sort of like looking at what different teams are running and sort of like doing like longer form pieces on why that's meaningful or significant, why it's meaningful that Duke. One of the first things I wrote in the preseason this year was how Duke was reorienting its 5-out offense around Cooper Flagg,
Hmm.
which is something that I'm sure more people will start to talk about as the season goes along. I've written about Kon Knueppel using staggered screens. I've written about Hunter Salas as a backdoor cutter for Wake Forest. I'm working on something right now about Clemson's secondary break and how it's just like Ian Shefflin as a trailer is like really, really powerful. So it's pretty nerdy, but it's a lot of film analysis, numbers, stats, and it has been pretty fun to see like the subscriber count jump up. It's all free. Like I don't. It's there's no pay to play here. Just but would appreciate subscribers and yeah, again 1 to 2 times per week. I'm still freelancing at a few other places here as well, mostly for 247 Sports. But yeah, BrianGeisinger.substack.com, aka Split the Action, scouting reports, and sort of like X and O's and numbers, especially on the ACC.
Yeah, if you want to learn about basketball, specifically ACC basketball, but just basketball on the whole, subscribe to this podcast. I'm a fresh subscriber myself, and I can already tell that it is a fantastic publication. And the preface to that plug was just to say that whatever jokes there are about the ACC right now and what happened in the ACC SEC challenge, if it's still called a challenge, it was very, very
Yeah,
challenging for the ACC this year.
yeah.
The ACC will be relevant in March. I promise you, whether
Mhm.
it's this weirdo Clemson team that we're going to hit on, or whether it's Duke, or whether it's like Pittsburgh making a run through, Jalen Lowe and Ismail Leggett, someone is going to pop. It is going to happen. And when it is, Brian and I will be talking about how we didn't pick it in our brackets and, but we'll be covering it in some capacity. But let's start with Duke. As the season pro that you are, you fed me a transition that I then, pushed to the side, but I'll bring it back on. You did write about how Duke was going to reorient its 5-out offense around Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg is the impetus for this episode and sort of the first real in-depth scout conversation I'm going to have about the 2025 draft. He's the presumptive number one pick. He was the number one high school recruit. 6'9", a 210-ish, 205-pound wing who is still 17 years old, turns 18 this month. And so he will be the youngest player in the NBA next year when he debuts. Uh, Currently averaging about 16, 9, and I think around 3.5. 16, 9, and 3.5, which if you are, he's among the youngest players in the NCAA right now. If you average stuff like that, it's very, very notable. A bit divisive on his scoring efficiency. I think his true shooting is around 50. Free throw shooting around 72%, shooting less than 30% from three. But he is doing a lot at Duke. His prospect profile was relentless competitor, really good defender, developing his offense, but sort of affects every corner of the box score, is always present on the floor, doing something to help his team. So, with all that said, Brian, how do you think he is playing at Duke, and how do you think Duke is doing the most to help him, at playing alongside Kon Knueppel, Khaman Maluach, Sion James, Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, the crew that they've got there.
Yeah, man, it's a really talented roster, that's for sure. Yeah, I think Cooper's played really well. I mean, I think if he had just like outside of the jump shot, everything else, like, and maybe some late game decision making kind of stuff that if you want to get into from the Kentucky game specifically. but I think for the most part, he's been pretty awesome. Defensively, he's everywhere, on the backside.
Mhm.
Incredible defensive rebounder, gets rebounds out of position, out of range, contested rebounds. It's not like he just gets, 4 or 5 a game getting missed free throws, right? Like he's flying above guys and covering ground to clean up the glass. And like he's like dominant at that sometimes. And I really love that trait in him. And again, just sort of like it fits his profile as like a ball hawk on that side of the floor. I think, especially when he's able to play with Malik Brown at the 5, and Duke is sort of like more aggressive with how it guards pick and rolls. They're gonna, hedge with Malik or soft hedge with Malik or switch sometimes. And Cooper can just put out fires on the backside. I think he's like been very impactful at that. And there have been some games this season where like his ability to like attack, like the Auburn game is probably the best example, but I think the Arizona game too, like his ability to like hunt matchups and
Mhm.
attack switches. Duke will use him. Either they'll give him the ball and they'll set up run a ball screen for him and let him operate in pick and roll. Or what's been very powerful for them has been Kon Knueppel has the ball. They let Cooper Flagg go set a screen for him, and then Cooper Flagg will like quick roll and look to get downhill and try to get loose on the short roll. He's a very good decision maker on the short roll. Or if he gets the switch, then he can try to isolate and score over the top. I mean, he's got his mid-range shots pretty much unblockable, like high release,
Yeah, I
incredibly
wanna I
get
wanna talk about that
yeah,
unblockability. Go ahead, yeah.
gets off the floor for it. And like he is a guy that like does look to get downhill too. Like he's not Cooper's a guy that is trying to attack the basket. He's drawing a ton of fouls. I've already heard I think I've heard 2 opposing coaches complain about it already in the press room. How I think Bruce Pearl and there was maybe one other coach that thought Cooper was maybe getting a little favorable whistle, but look, he's long and athletic and he's trying to get into the paint. So like he is also just going to like draw a lot of contact. I think his open floor passing has been very good. That was
Mhm.
something that I didn't really watch Cooper much until this past spring summer, and I finally watched some of the prep film with him. And the open floor passing really jumped off the screen to me, and I think that's been very good. I think the pick and roll decision making has been okay when he's able to like find like the spray pass, like the skip or the kick out. I don't think his sort of like threading the needle on a pocket pass to one of the 5s is like quite there yet, but he can make a lot of different reads and make a lot of different passes. He is unselfish. Like he is like looking to get guys going. Um, and so he's just like even without the scoring, he's a winning player because of the defense, the
Mhm.
havoc stuff he does on that side of the court, the connecting in transition, the pick and roll operation, the willingness to screen. So there's some of the stuff he does, and we're like years away from some of these things like being actually like fully actualized. Like he's got to get stronger, he's got to get on a good team. But like to me, when I watched him play, it dawned on me. It was during the UIW game against Incarnate Word, where it was like he just I was at the game, and it was like he's built to be a guy that like is a destructive force in NBA playoff basketball
Right.
because of how he beats up switches, because of how all the things he can do defensively, the passing, the foul creation, like the short rolls, all of that stuff is so good. And then in terms of like how Duke has oriented its offense around him, like it's been sort of a combination of 2 things. One, Duke ran a lot of 5 out last season with Kyle Filipowski. I'm sure you and I talked about this. It's just sort of like that was when they moved Flip to the 5. Derek Lively leaves, he becomes the 5. They went 5 out around Flip, and it was really good. It never quite hit full steam though because Mark Mitchell and his lack of shooting
Mhm.
sort of allowed teams to guard it certain ways, and it was very good mostly because of Filipowski and Jared McCain's ability to run around and shoot threes. But they're basically putting Cooper in the spot that Filipowski had last year. So when Duke's running a lot of these 5 out sets, it's not the center with the ball in the middle, it's Cooper Flagg. And they're taking the center, whether it's Khaman Maluach or it's Malik Brown or it's Patrick Ngongba, and they're putting that player on the left wing. And this is something that's been talked about in sort of like nerd circles among NBA fans online. But this is the Joe Mazzulla or the Quinn Snyder strategy of taking your non-shooting centers and putting them on the wing. And you're seeing the Charlotte Hornets are doing it this season as well, as Charles Lee has come from the
Hmm.
Boston Celtics and implemented this in Charlotte. So you're seeing Mark Williams now, or Nick Richards, or Taj Gibson, whomever's playing center for them. They're playing on the wing while Brandon Miller or Miles Bridges is operating, is opening up the offense in the middle of the court. So like Duke is taking a 17-year-old who is the guy that's putting out all the fires for them defensively on the backside, and they're giving him the keys to this 5-out offense. And they're surrounding him with great shooters, Knueppel, Proctor, secondary ball handlers, Sion James, guys that he can run pick and roll with, lob threat with Maluach, a short roll guy with Malik Brown, and they're giving him all of that, and they've just given him the keys to an extent. And I think there have been some growing pains for sure, no doubt. Like it's not perfect. Um, but I think some of the stuff that he's shown in that setup is really impressive. I think it's cool that Duke has sort of like given him this opportunity, because to me it's like it's forecasting what his future looks like. You know what I mean? Like Cooper Flagg initiating 5-out offense, that is like a thing that he will do for the next 15 years of his life, kind of, assuming, provided he hits all of these lofty, expectations of his. So there's probably more thoughts I have on Flagg, but as far as
Yeah.
an opening foray, that's probably where I would lean with Cooper. But I'd be curious. I don't know I don't know where a lot of other people are on Flagg right now, because it's been like maybe a little uneasy to start the season. So I'd be curious to know sort of like your evaluation of him the
Oh,
first month.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what people are saying. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah,
Who cares what we think? We're just two guys chopping it up.
that's
No,
true.
here's what I think. Because Cooper was billed as this guy who can do a little bit of everything, it is very exciting, as you are putting it, that Duke is trying to fill up his plate with as many different, I guess, sort of foods as possible, and seeing how much he can handle of everything. They aren't really trying to, they're trying to put him in a position to succeed, but they aren't like coddling him.
Mhm.
And when you're given that amount of responsibility, I think I think a lot of people who are just tuning in because they're excited about Cooper Flagg are wanting to just see the efficiency and the highlights and the box score productivity, and they don't want to
Mhm.
see late game turnovers, and they don't want to see some indecision. Cooper's made some mistakes here and there, but again, like I said, not only is he going to be the youngest player in the NBA, but he is one of the youngest players in college basketball. Certainly, probably the youngest, apart from maybe Jaden Quaintance, who's getting
He
real.
is the youngest, yeah, and looks
Yeah,
awesome too. Looks awesome as well.
yeah. I'll get to Jaden in due time.
Yeah,
Guy,
yeah.
boy's wild, but he's one of the youngest guys, and certainly the youngest player in college basketball who's being empowered to this degree. And
Mhm.
so it would be great if 6'9" potential first team all defense in 2028 player Cooper Flagg also shot 40% from three. That'd be great. That also
Mhm.
would mean that he was like the best prospect of the last 15 years. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is, you're not going to get everything with every prospect. The real question is, to what extent are whatever growing pains there are, and I'll touch on the ones that I'm seeing and how endemic they are to his game. So I think that the biggest thing to me is his preference for this, what we call this unblockable jumper, because he is such a good vertical athlete. And his wingspan, I don't know what his wingspan is, 7'1", 7'2". I saw somewhere 7'5", but it's all unconfirmed. Who
Yeah.
knows? But when
I would be
he,
skeptical of that number, but
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Why not 7'9"?
yeah.
I think because he's such a good vertical athlete and he's 6'9" and he has those arms, that is when he decides to rise up, he knows he can get that shot off no matter what. And a
Mhm.
common trait of big wings, including a couple who've gone to Duke, whether it's Brandon Ingram or Jason Tatum or Paolo to a lesser extent, but these high profile, top overall prospect, top 2 or 3 overall recruit players, uh, in college, they have trouble navigating a more cramped floor with their handle. It's more
Mhm.
pronounced in those guys more from the 2010s before the offenses started to evolve a little bit, like you're saying,
Yeah.
with putting Maluach out on the wing. But even so, Maluach has only attempted 3 threes the whole season. So it's not
Yeah.
as though I think other teams truly respect him as a shooting threat yet.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
because the middle of the floor is not entirely open for Cooper, or even when he has a little bit of doubt in his mind about smaller defenders trying to crowd his handle, he knows, look, if I'm experiencing any sort of hesitance, I can just rise up and I'll have that look. And I
Mhm.
think his preference for doing that, it's not as though he's shooting poorly from mid range. I think he's
Mhm.
shooting like mid to high 30s, which is like perfectly acceptable. If you're over 40% from the mid range from far two, then like that's a really good
Mhm.
sign and like a really green flag for you, no pun intended. But the issue is just that Cooper is shooting those shots a lot. So there is a disproportionate amount of his shots that are coming from the mid range that he's shooting mid to high 30s on. That will tend to drag everything down. For
Mhm.
someone of Cooper's athletic talent, he's shooting 50% from two. And the sub 30% from three doesn't bother me that much. Again, I don't think he was ever sold as this lights out shooter, but you would want him to develop an area of dominance as a scorer on the floor. And I think when I watch him attack the basket, if he were to excise some of those, you know, vertical jumpers for more. I mean, you mentioned the friendly whistle. I don't want to call it like grifty kind of stuff, but
Mhm.
like he's the kind of guy where his arms are so long and his torso is so wide. He's such a unique like body type to handle the ball that if he just like swings his arms and tries to go up strong, like you can't help but foul him. It's just
Mhm.
so hard to guard and
Yep.
contain at
Yep.
6'9". And I think I wrote on Twitter recently that Cooper's like a better prospect than this person. But one thing that I thought was very interesting about Matas Buzelis, who went
Mhm.
11th or 10th in the draft last year, was that when he drives, and Matas is a lot like physically weaker than Cooper. Cooper's like a blue chip version of this kind of athlete. But Matas would always, stay facing up. He would like always have some sort of euro in his bag to maximize the amount of time his body was square towards the hoop on a drive to try to finish. And because Matas was 6'9", 6'10", he got a lot of foul calls, and it helped to boost his sort of driving efficiency. With Cooper, I see him like right at the end when he could choose to do something like that and do like some more awkward looking kinds of finishes. He will either rise up or
Mhm.
he will go into a post up. And I think out of his post ups, he generates again good looks for a
Mhm.
post up player. Like he turns around, he's very good at squaring his shoulders in midair towards the hoop. Like it all looks okay. It's just like if that is too much of your diet, no matter how good it looks, like for a 17-year-old kid, it's going to bring your numbers
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So I think it's just sort of as far as like the biggest picture thing, which is his scoring efficiency, I think it's more of like a reallocation. There's no question that that vertical jumper is going to be something he really needs. So it's good that he's getting his reps in on it for sure. He's going to need to extend that out to three if he ever wants to be like a first team All NBA
Yeah.
player, like
Yeah.
whatever. That's all going to need to be there. But I think I'm a big believer in developing an area of dominance first and
Mhm.
then trying to grow your game off of that, but you need to have bread and butter.
Yeah.
And that's my thing with him is I think this sort of idea that he's trying a little bit of everything all at once makes it hard for him to know what his bread and butter on offense is. I think he's most comfortable with the vertical jumper, but I think he needs to find something else that he knows he can rely on. And like I said, if he keeps going downhill, like attacking those switches like you're talking
Yeah.
about, when he gets an inverted pick and roll screen, when one of those guards screens for him and he gets a mismatch, I think it also helps him because he, how can I put this? He has that little bit of extra space usually just coming off of the screen, and he can
Mhm.
take a more aggressive downhill dribble that can lead into a natural finishing motion.
Mhm.
That's what I like about it, as opposed to if he's in ISO just on a switch, I think he defaults to that vertical jumper because there's no ready immediate path towards the hoop. Whereas in
Yeah.
pick and roll, you're just kind of going downhill a little bit already. And
Yeah.
so if he leans a bit more into those drives and he tries something that Buzelis does, or he just tries to shove people out of the way like Tari Eason, I think his offensive game is like could learn a bit from Tari at LSU. That's where I think you can get a bread and butter of just getting to the line and constantly pressuring that defense, where you can get all that help to commit, you get easy passes off of that, and like that's where he could have a jump. So,
Yeah.
and that's not to say that I'm down on him, because I'm not. I just think that
Mhm.
that's an area that I think could really help him out.
Yeah, I agree. I really some you said some really interesting things in there. And there's some other stuff I'm like agree with you on as well. Like, so first off, like I do think the ISO stuff with him, it's like I kind of wish they would like toggle, like find the right matchups, find the right ways to like get into those. And I think down the stretch against Auburn, they did a little bit better job
Mm-hmm.
of sort of like pointing the needle at the right thing. Like the last play of the Kentucky game, like yeah, Cooper Flagg going one on one in the middle of the court against Andrew Carr, who's 5 years older than him.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
And
not,
like can match his size
yeah,
legitimately.
exactly. Has
Yeah.
length and is, older and stronger. And like look, it's reductive to say like once Cooper gets stronger, this is going to make this stuff easier. It will though, because like
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons why he's so dependent on the like mid-range, leaners and fades is because like he's trying to like play the bump and get into the paint, but
Mm-hmm.
there's just certain guys he can't overpower, but what he can do is he can jump over everybody and shoot.
Exactly.
And
Right.
so and also I've noticed this with him too, watching him more at Duke, like his offensive game when he catches the ball in isolation, one of the things, or when he catches it sort of like off like a swing, like maybe it's more of like a spot up type of look, but he's looking to drive off of it. He does the little like Kawhi Leonard like rocker step move where he'll like jab with his right foot, pull back, reset back in triple threat, and then like look to explode and get downhill there. And like I like that a lot as like a triple threat package, but like he doesn't really have the strength yet to just like beat up guys that are 4 years older than him. You know what I mean? Like guys can stack him up a
It
little
doesn't
bit,
have the wise strength. Yeah.
and so like yeah, no, I mean very few basketball players
Very few. Yeah.
forever have
Yeah.
that. Maybe his teammate Sion James pretty strong, but I mean no one's Kawhi really. And so, I mean, look, he's got the Cooper has the frame. He's going to add weight. Like it's undeniable. I'm sure he's bulking. He's adding weight throughout the season, and like it's something in the off season. I'm sure he'll do a lot of as well. Um,
He's 17. I mean, I guess we can call him 18 now. He turns
18.
18 this month, but
I,
that, I
I think
mean, so young.
I
Yeah.
think this weekend he turns 18 actually.
Yeah.
But the like I think that's gonna that like the strength alone will help him. In the meantime, one of the things that and you talked about the inverted pick and rolls. And
Hmm.
like that is absolutely like they started using that a little bit more since the Arizona game when they did a bunch of like Cooper Flag, Knueppel inverted pick
Hmm.
and rolls, and that was very powerful against a good Wildcats defensive team, but a team that has, smaller guards and stuff like that, was very useful in that matchup. I think the other thing for him, and this is sort of like I was talking about, I was making the comparison with he and Filipowski. They're obviously different players in many ways, but I said this a few minutes ago when you and I were talking, and I asked John Shire about this after their most recent game against Incarnate Word. Like one of the bread and butter plays for Duke when they had Kyle Filipowski was empty corner pick and roll with Kyle Filipowski as the screen setter for Jeremy Roach. Usually, sometimes it was Dariq
Hmm.
Whitehead or Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, Jared McCain last season, obviously too, but a lot of it was Jeremy Roach. And Filipowski was so good. on the short roll, right? Like making plays in those pockets of space, and Cooper is too. And so it's like, look, Cooper may not want to be like, "Hey, are you cool to set 30 ball screens per game?" He might be. He might be cool with that. I don't actually know. But like he sets a lot of screens already for them, but I think they could dial that up even more. And like I really think it's going to be like if you ever see Duke in a tight spot offensively, I bet you're going to see Kon Knueppel empty side pick and roll with Cooper Flagg as a setting a screen for him and trying to either get the switch or what I think they should be looking for even more is Cooper on the short roll because that is a way to get him into space, get him into the paint. It's free throws, it's dunks, it's lobs to Maluach, it's drop offs to Malik Brown, and it's kicking out wide to Tyrese Proctor, who's shooting a good ball from three this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is the other thing they should like spam a little bit more with him. Um, just because it gets him into good spots on the floor for him, but like in space too. So I mean, it depends on teams being, how they're going to guard those actions. But even if they're switching, Cooper's so fast he can quick spin and get down. Like he can beat a switch. You know what I mean to those spots and still open up those short roll angles, even if teams are trying to switch those actions. So um, for me, there's some like low hanging fruit for them to grab this season. And I was looking at these numbers actually, as you were just talking right now, Cooper, these are mid-range twos. These are 2-point attempts that are inside the paint, but away from the restricted area. Cooper
Mm-hmm.
Flagg's averaging 2.8 of those attempts per game. It's about 21% of his field goal attempts. It's a lot.
It is.
Shooting 54% on those looks, which is a very good number. If
Right.
you pull it out to mid-range twos that are outside the paint, inside the arc, he's taking 3 of those per game. So he's already taken 6 twos per game, basically, that are away from the
Away from the
rim.
paint. Yeah.
And that accounts for, 40 some percent of his shots. And on those longer twos, he's only shooting 27% on those looks. But then this is kind of interesting. Like this Duke team right now, as they've gone to this 5-out approach, they're top 25 or around there nationally in 3-point attempt rate. Like this Duke team is going to set a program record, for threes taken in a season. About 48% of their shots have been threes. CBB Analytics does a cool thing where they break up the percentage of shots from player that are either like a three or at the rim, right? The two like money areas of the court.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Everyone on Duke's rotation, including guys like Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, who are sort of like so-so rim pressure guards, um, above 80% in terms of like 80% or more of their field goal attempts are coming at the rim or their threes. The only player that has a ton of mid-range volume is Cooper. He's the
Right.
only guy under 80% in that group, and he's getting only 56.4% of his shots are either at the rim or threes. And part of that is because he's the playmaker for them, but also part of it is because of these sort of like things that I think are lulling him into more mid-range diet too.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
He knows he can get to that shot, and he's not the kind of guy who is going to set up 25 feet from the rim the way that NBA superstars do, because NBA
Yeah.
superstars have the footwork to get their three off the dribble and have all this faith that they can shoot 12 of them a game with a mega green light from their coach because they're, the max player. Like Cooper just isn't there yet. He would rather set up 18 feet from the rim, and that means that if he rises up, that's going to be in that area. I also would like to see, and you can tell me if you've noticed them incorporate this at all, but like when a team has as many good shooting guards as Duke has, the temptation is going to be to use a lot of them in off-ball actions to try to spring them off of screens or use them as sort of like a
Mhm.
Spain screener or a ghost screener or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think they would do very well to have inverted screens for Cooper, not only on the ball, but off the ball, so that he could get the
Mhm.
ball, coming off of a pin down, curling towards the middle of the floor, get it on the catch, so that it would weaponize, I think, both his driving ability, if he has any space. Again, it's easy to just get downhill and go, or to leverage his connective passing. What I see out of Cooper as a passer is that I think he's very, very good as a perimeter passer when he's making a decision within the first second or so to pass the ball.
Mhm.
When he, and I don't want to say predetermined, But when he gets the ball and he knows that there's a pass to make, like he'll hit it and he'll make it, and he might even manipulate someone and look someone off and make a different pass. As long as he's just caught the ball, he's along the perimeter, and it's quick. When he goes downhill, if he's attacking either a switch or even if he gets a pick and roll and starts going downhill, I think that is the only time that I see him getting tunnel vision, with him starting to struggle between shoot and pass and struggle between, am I going to drive to score or am I going to stop and rise up? It's the only time I see sort of the wheels turning in his head a little bit. But I think if you spring him off the ball and he knows that there's going to be someone open somewhere immediately, he will either hit that person, or if there's a runway, he'll go right for it. And I think that might be an easier way sometimes in some matchups of getting him the ball than doing that short roll where
Yeah.
like the entry pass has to be right there and you're probably
Mhm.
throwing it into some crowded arms if he's
Yeah.
rolling towards a big, you know.
No, that's a
I
fair
think that could
point.
help him as well.
Yeah, no, agreed. And like, I mean, this is one of the trade-offs if like if he's going to be the guy that's like initiating your five out offense, then it's probably less like direct like pin down usage for him, right? Because like he's the guy
Exactly.
with the ball that's like waiting for Kon Knueppel to come off of the down screen and pass it to him. And like Knueppel has been heavily featured coming off screens.
Mhm.
Like Duke's the foundation of Duke's offense is like Cooper creation and like Kon coming off of screens. Like
Yeah,
right now,
he's in the McCain role
yeah,
if he's
exactly.
if
And I mean,
Cooper's in the flag or
and they're
Cooper's in the
yeah,
Filipowski. Yeah, sorry, go
Filipowski
ahead.
role, and obviously, like Cons, they're using a lot of similar actions to McCain. They're also now featuring Isaiah Evans in a lot of those roles too, as he's sort of like gotten hot as a microwave shooter for them recently. But yes, this is also one of the reasons why, especially when Malik Brown is playing center, I
I love
kind
that
of
you keep mentioning Malik. I like Malik a lot too.
he's
Really
awesome.
smart player, smart and very athletic.
The fastest hands I've ever seen. And actually, John Shire said after a game recently, it's the best hands of any player he's ever coached at Duke.
You know, just ask Janai Broom. Janai doesn't want any more
It's,
Malik
I mean,
Brown.
he's just
He
like
had,
his hands are just everywhere. He is
yeah.
the most disruptive defensive center I think I've ever seen, at least in college, up close against like five out action. Because he's just like at the point of attack, it's crazy
Hmm.
what he can do. But Malik can also handle the ball and is a very good passer.
Hmm.
And so in situations where Malik is playing five, and they did this in the Louisville game, some, I kind of would like for them to like change the roles around and let Malik become the guy that's like initiating for the five out offense when you
Sure.
want to get to those like delay sets. Put Cooper in one of the corners, put Kon in the other one, and then like play out of that would be
Mhm.
my thought. And so that way you've got Cooper coming off of a down screen for a catch and shoot, or you've got Cooper coming off of a zoom action, right? Like a down screen into the dribble handoff with Malik Brown, like stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'd like to
It
see. Yeah.
speeds it up. You're still getting him ball screen reads, but you're speeding it up. You're scrambling the defense a little bit. So I would kind of like to see them like move to that a little bit. Duke runs a lot of like wide pin down action for Proctor and for Knueppel, and like there's no reason why they couldn't like try to feature Cooper some more with that too on it. So it's like I think they should be looking for ways to get him the ball coming off of the catch more and coming off of or coming into these like zoom actions, before he's launching the ball screen set. They have some like back screen sets for him, where they'll try to like, first play of the game, have a guard set a back screen and throw Cooper a
A
lob.
lob, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
or they've got this one five out play. It's like a John Beeline set. They ran for Filipowski a lot last year where like Cooper looks left, he passes right, and then one of the other guards lifts up and sets a back screen to roll him to the post. But honestly, the possessions where he probably is like getting as many like catch and shoot opportunities that you might, where he's probably getting his most catch and shoot opportunities is like baseline out of bounds plays.
Hmm.
When they kind of like sink he and Knueppel up and like screen the screener looks and stuff like that. So, but just in general, like more of that I think would be a good thing and could like level it out and make him just like a more efficient player in general too.
Yeah.
So
Like you want to be able to leverage what his quickest pathway to scoring is. And to me, his quickest pathway to scoring, if you can't hit him on one of those lobs, is to give him as open a driving lane as possible. Because
yeah,
that's
yeah,
as I keep it's gonna be hilarious if I put myself in this position. If I ever had the talent to play Division One college basketball, and I was defending against this Duke Blue Devil team. What I would like least would be an open runway for Cooper Flagg that I am
Yeah,
trying to
that
defend.
that would be death for you.
I would
Yeah,
want no part of that. If
yeah,
Cooper wants to try to do some clever baseline out of bounds play where he shoots a three, you take all of them that you want, Cooper. I don't want to meet you at the rim. So
yeah.
that I think we're saying the same thing. I think we'd like to see that as well. On the defensive side of the ball, I do want to mention one thing with him, which is something that I don't think it matters that much in the grand scheme of his scouting report, but I do want to mention it. You said that they're using Malik to hedge a bit more on pick and roll
Mhm.
because Cooper can put out all these fires, basically just with his ground coverage and
Yeah,
his effort,
yeah.
his awareness, all that sort of thing. I have noticed that it's mainly been in ISO when he's guarding players smaller than he. What I expected to see from Cooper is, based on his reputation and like what I'd seen of his in high school, is like this absolute demon who is just gonna annihilate people defensively. Like like instantly going to be one of like the five most impactful defenders in college basketball. This absolute blue chip, like
Mhm.
OG Anunoby-ish kind of defender.
Yeah.
What I have noticed with him is that guards who have like a really good handle, who are smaller than him, are not like they're not in jail when Cooper is on them. In fact,
Yeah.
I've seen him get wrong-footed. I've seen him leave his feet and be a little bit too eager with some of those guys. I don't know if I'm trying to think of specific examples. I'm sure that like Otiga Owe got him once or twice when they were playing Kentucky, but it's just sort of like I don't know what to make of it because he's having so much on his plate. But I haven't seen a defender like I'll go back to Tari Eason, who I really think is more of a is in Cooper's universe with certain aspects of his game. When Tari was on the ball defending at LSU or at
Yeah.
Cincinnati, like that was you are in prison. Like no
Yeah.
one wanted that guy on him.
Very unpleasant. Very
Yes.
long, athletic, ferocious, laterally, impenetrable. Yeah.
And looking to take the ball all of the time. I
Yeah.
think Cooper is looking to erase a lot of shots, and he has almost like a 6 block rate, which is incredible for like a freshman wing playing high minutes and bearing a two-way
Three
burden.
steal rate too.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Like that's
Yeah.
really great. But I think most of those steals I think are like backside
Oh, for
help.
sure. Yes. Undoubtedly. Yeah, for
And
sure.
so I want to know what you think about his where you see his defense, his like ISO defense going, because when he gets to the next level, the handles are always going to be really, really good, and the athletes are
Mhm.
always going to be really good, and a lot of them are like already utilize timing. And I just want to see, do you think his timing is going to get better? Do you see the same thing I'm seeing? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I don't think his like on ball defense has been like yeah, even before he got to college, I don't think it like was his calling card. I think it was like the sort of like disruptive team defense stuff.
Mhm.
That was really like the pitch with him. I think him getting stronger will help him with some of that too. Maybe not with some of the sort of like, smaller, like zippy guards or whatever. But
In the NBA, like Zippy Bug is Donovan Mitchell,
yeah,
but yeah.
right. But also, like, no one can keep him in front. Like, no one. Like
Well,
that's
that's what I'm
we
saying. It's a
like like
yeah.
that. But like I used to I always laugh when it's like I feel like I remember having this conversation on BuzzBeat a few years ago where we were like talking about like, do you think the center could switch out and guard Donovan Mitchell? And I was like, no, Donovan Mitchell burns all of those guys to a crisp. You know what I mean? Like all of those guys get fried when they're like they've got to like Cooper's going to be expected to guard on the wing.
Was it Mamu? We're talking about Sandro
I don't
Mamukelashvili. You
think it
think
was him. It may have been like it may have been like Sticks, like it may have been
Oh my
Jalen's
God.
it may have been him. I
Oh
can't
man.
remember, but yeah, this is a while ago. But
Shout out Lee. We love you, Lee.
yeah, but ran into I live here in Raleigh, ran into Lee walking around in Raleigh recently, which was delightful.
Yeah, that's lovely.
But yeah, no, like it's something that like I think him getting stronger. I think his like timing and sort of like commitment to taking that stuff away is going to get better. I don't think he's going to be I'm not sure. Like, I think he's going to basically be like solid guarding guys, and because of his size and athleticism, he'll have like great positional versatility in that. But like
Hmm.
the thing that's going to like make him special is the stuff that you're already seeing on that side of the floor, which is the weak side rim protection. It's him being in passing lanes. It's him, hustling, down back down the floor and to stop a transition bucket or whatever. Like it's the whether you call them like hustle winning plays or they're sort of like more in space defensive playmaking things like those. That's really the stuff that like is gonna like set him apart. But I do think he's gonna be, because of his length, his agility. I think he's just gonna have to get stronger and a little bit more committed, and I think ultimately he's not going to be like a target, and that I think and he'll be right now, I watch I watch every Hornets game, and like Brandon Miller is also having to carry like a ton of offensive responsibility for
Hmm.
them. But
Hmm.
like like he's an okay defender. Like no one can pick on Brandon Miller. You know what I mean?
No,
But
he's
but
six
but
eight with a 7 foot wingspan, whatever he
so
is.
so that, so that's sort of like where I'm at. That's sort of like where I'm at with. I mean, Brandon struggles when he like spaces out off the ball a little bit, but like Cooper like fits he's an even more impressive athlete, and I just think
Hmm.
the older he gets, he's going to get better. And like the one-on-one perimeter defensive stuff, like the issues with that, like to me that showed up when he was playing at Montverde too. To be totally honest with you,
You
like
thought so? Yeah.
I was looking at clips that I had of Jeremiah Fears, who's setting the world on fire at Oklahoma right now, and I had clipped a game over the summer of AZ Compass versus Montverde, and like yeah, Jeremy Fears got him in a or Jeremiah Fears got him on a switch and drove by him and stuff like that too. So like I think there were times where like he was still liable to give up a drive. So getting stronger, get better laterally, and I think ultimately he has the chance to still be like a pretty solid perimeter space defender.
I think he would like certainly pretty solid. Yes. It's just I always want to be mindful of stuff that I think is, I don't want to say like natural, but stuff you can't teach, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very hard. I mean, every coach in the world is going to try to teach disciplined footwork and not falling for fakes and
Mhm.
whatever. But NBA guys are so good at it, like, either you have that reactivity sort of ingrained or you don't. I really do kind of believe that. Even if you can get better at it. I think you see a lot of guys go from like bad to average. I think you
Mhm.
can see that sort of improvement. That can be really meaningful improvement. I mean, that could
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
difference between like playing and not playing in crunch time.
Sure, sure.
But I think for again, if the thought that Cooper was going to be an exceptional defender basically in whatever you wanted him to do, the old draft fallacy, I guard 1 through 5, which is never true.
Yeah. Again,
But if
back
you
Donovan
th-
Mitchell burns all of those guys, like it
Yeah, Jokic.
doesn't
I
work.
can guard Jokic. I can guard
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you think that Cooper was going to be this all-world defensive prospect, I do think that sort of one-on-one stuff. Again, I'm going to compare him again to Tari, who's
Mhm.
spearheading, one of the best defenses in the NBA in his third season. Him and Amen
Amazing.
Thompson,
Yeah.
like that is a difference between someone who I think just naturally has some of that stuff and
Mhm.
has the strength to just disrupt very organically versus someone like Cooper. Now, you keep mentioning once he gets stronger, which I think is enough to be optimistic about. It's also enough to be optimistic about his role shrinking because
Mhm.
unlikely that he will ever bear that. Like he's almost 30 usage as a
Yeah.
freshman. So
And
like, and
20
that
whatever percent assist rate too. You know what I
right,
mean? So yeah.
22, 23,
Yeah.
like very positive assist turnover ratio. Like I don't think that he will have this much offensive usage at the next level unless he's like in his prime and 27 years old and like a super duper star and has taken some
Yeah.
sort of like Tatum-y kind of path to his career.
Yeah.
So if you shrink all of that, then that defensive stuff and the engagement probably improves a little bit too. But I don't want to say like, oh, well, once these little changes made, then you all of a sudden have like Tari Eason. Tari
Yeah.
Eason's Tari Eason. And it's very hard to find
Yeah.
like it was always there. And I don't want to like wish upon a star that Cooper gets to that level on defense. I think he'll get to a very, very good level, maybe an all defense level one day, but it's just, you have to just, I just am keeping in mind like what is truly elite and special and be realistic about where he is because I think that that is hard. In the
Yeah.
same way, I don't think he'll ever be as good a shooter as Jason Tatum is. Could be a very good shooter, really, really
Yeah.
effective player, like all-star player. But Tatum shot whatever it was, 84% from the free throw line at Duke and
Mhm.
shot 40% as a rookie in the NBA from three for a
Yeah.
conference finalist. It's very hard to live up to, you know. And
Mhm.
I don't say this to pour cold water on Cooper because I think there are lots of avenues for him to be an extremely effective player. And he is a year younger, but I'm keeping all of that sort of in the back of my head when I
Yeah.
evaluate it. Yeah.
I think that's all fair. I do think like the rebounding component factors into sort of the defense too. Like
Yes, I agree.
his
Yeah.
ability on the he really does, control the glass and rebound everything. Um but yeah, like it's yeah, the like thinking about Tatum is interesting for a lot of different ways. I'll be curious to see like where Cooper's shooting stuff ends this season. Like he's gonna I do you think he ends the season above 30% from three? Right now he's at
I
22%.
you know, flip a coin.
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe.
I
Yeah, who
don't
knows?
maybe,
I
but
think
like
the fact that
yeah.
the touch even during the preseason, touch the line didn't look that good. It's a little disappointing. But also like I do think for a guy like Cooper, like it's worth like really like looking at him with a like discerning eye. And so it's fine. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's not totally fair because he's so young and he's got this mega spotlight on him. But at the same point in time, like if this guy's going to be the number one pick, then you should consider all these, all these sort of like avenues of evaluating his game. And yeah, defensively, it really is like one on one offensively, one on one defensively. Like
Right.
I think we can say
Yes.
like in those two spaces, like he's gonna, and that's sort of gonna like sink or swim, him either as a star or him as a potential like all NBA or all defensive guy or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like I could say, you know, and I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just tossing it out here as something that I think about. Like, do I think that Cooper Flagg is going to be better as a two-way player than Jalen Williams on the Oklahoma City Thunder? Now, there's no question that at this point in their respective careers, Cooper
mhm,
Flagg is like galaxies better than Jalen Williams was, but Jalen's, notorious late bloomer.
mhm.
Now, Jalen is, going to be approaching like a 50, 40, 85 defending four positions,
Yeah,
and playing off of an MVP candidate, but
sure.
he'll make 4 or 5 all-star games
He
in the
might make
next
it this year.
8 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
he probably should.
and
Yeah.
so, you think to yourself, well, does that mean that Jalen, even though Jalen Williams is not the best player on his team, is he really returning kind of number one pick level value? Isn't that sort of the perfect guy you'd kind of want if you're trying to win a title, if you have an MVP candidate next to him? And that's sort of what I think, like, is Cooper more in that mold? I'm of the opinion that if you're the right kind of
Mhm.
Robin, whatever. I hate those analogies.
Yeah, it's
But
tough.
if you're the right kind of number two or whatever,
Yeah.
that could very well be worth the number one pick. You could have called like Scottie Pippen a number two. He's
Yeah.
worth a number one pick. But you need to be pretty aggressive in projecting him to reach a level like that. And
Mhm.
that's what I'll just wait to see.
What
It's
do you think a guy like Franz Wagner, is he like a number one pick kind of caliber player too? Sort of like in the
yeah, I mean,
NFC.
you run back that 2021 draft, you
It's an
would definitely
insanely good draft,
You'd have. I think Franz. I've been very high on
Mobley.
Franz, except for a brief moment this summer where I got
Yeah.
weak. But I've been very high on Franz since that draft as one of the. I think last year I did a big ranking of all those guys since 21, and I think I had Mobley number one and like Franz number two or
Two.
three.
The draft was loaded, so it's like
So
it's
like,
Scotty, obviously Cade. It was a very good draft.
but the thing with Franz is that he was in college 2 years. He was also like a reclass guy. So his freshman year, he was a year younger, but
Yep.
he came up as a connective piece.
Mhm.
Never really at Michigan had this amount of two-way
Yeah.
responsibility, but was always a better shooter. I think he shot, oh gosh, I like over 80% from the free throw line in college and like mid 30s from three.
He also
And
shot it well in Germany before he came
yes,
to
he
the States
did.
too.
And
He was
like,
like a
and
6'1" shooting guard who like grew to be a like power wing, you
right,
know?
and he'd had the guard
Mhm.
growth spurt or whatever,
Yeah,
and there
yeah.
you go. And then he has the handle, he has the passing vision, and everything. So I get the Franz comps for Cooper. It's just it's still relatively early in his development arc, and it's hard to compare him to any of these wings that are like 50, 40, 85 guys. It's
Yeah.
just is he like
Yeah.
Paul George? Well, it's really
Yeah.
is he like Chris Middleton? Well,
Ye
you know,
yeah,
like
that's always the tough, like, the tough one with a guy like PG, like Paul George is like I ran into this all the time with when evaluating Brandon Miller for the 2023 draft because like PG was like the comp was sort of like the lazy man kind of comp, you know?
yeah, yeah.
But it's like Paul George is like the best version of this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the sort of like um super scalable, malleable wing that can gravity bender, you know, shoot off the catch, but can give you some pick and roll initiation, decent defensively. PG was amazing
He
defensively at
was
one
in
point in his
his
career.
day, yeah. And like
Um,
a freak athlete or
and
like
so
Pacers Paul George was insane.
unbelievable. And like that's the one thing that's really that and Miller's like Miller in the open floor is like a pretty good athlete. Um, but yeah, he's not the like the comparison between PG and Miller sort of like gets like a little shaky. Like once you start thinking about the athlete that Paul was, you know, when he first
Right.
came to the NBA versus like what Brandon is now, which is like not a bad athlete, but it's not like what PG was. But yeah, just like taking the best version of an archetype and saying like, well, will this player get to that? It's like, I mean, I don't know. Like this guy's basically spent the last a decade being a top 10 player in the NBA. So like
Right.
it would be hard to get to get to that level.
Right. That's why I'm talking about, you know, Tari, Buzelis,
Yeah,
Anunoby I mentioned, Jalen Williams, like the that's a spectrum of guy who is unlikely to ever be like a number one option the way that Paul George was, or the way that
mhm.
like you know Franz, they went 11-1 with him as the number one option when Paolo
Crazy,
got hurt. So like
crazy.
I'm trying to think of supplementary wing players who are versatile for sure, but maybe don't have the just sort of like the nuclear efficiency within them to be an MVP candidate, a first team all NBA
Yeah,
player, stuff like that. Cause it
yeah,
like once you realize that like first team all NBA guys are so absurdly efficient on offense, it's
yeah,
very hard to project Cooper there. Like, you know, and
yeah.
once you do that, you're like, well, okay, well, could he be a second team all NBA guy? Could he be a third team all NBA guy? And I think that, sure, it's possible. But once you start taking first team off the table, you're like, well, is he the number one pick? Is there someone else who I like a little bit more? And I haven't made up my like it's all very early. I just mean that like this is my thought process when I'm going through with it.
It's fair, and you know, it doesn't hurt that there's a lot of other like really intriguing guys in this draft. Like
No.
I still like very much have like Cooper in his own tier, but like I'm, you know, I'm interested to see how the guys that are directly underneath him. I'm curious to see how that the rest of the season plays out for them. Yeah, I mean Tatum is like an interesting analog too because I don't think of him as like super hyper efficient offensive player, but he's like he's a great team defender. He's a good passer. He gets to the rim. He takes a lot of threes. But he also plays in this like amazing offensive ecosystem too, right?
He
That
does.
like
Yeah.
and he's all you know he's been I think he's been a first team all NBA guy and he's always sort of like
Oh, yes, he has. Yeah.
fringe MVP type probably gets you know some fifth place votes or whatever here and there um but I don't think of like Tatum isn't the type of just like you know unbelievably efficient scorer who just like absolutely is like you know an A1 engine of offense right or do you would you push back on that like
Not an
he's
A1, no. I mean,
yeah
Boston's whole thing is that they have four or it's sometimes five guys who can handle the ball
yeah
on the court at any given time. And they have a center who's always drawing the other center out. And then every one of the five of them can attack mismatches in the post. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what makes them so hard. Even Peyton
Yeah.
Pritchard can attack guys in the post. So,
Yeah.
like, that is a very beautiful offense that Tatum gets to play in. But I also think that Tatum, like, early in his career, Tatum was still very successful. Like I said, I mean, Eastern Conference Finals as a rookie,
Yeah.
but they wanted him to go to the basket more. And the thought was he was settling for jumpers too much. And I
Yeah.
think Jason Tatum settling for jumpers is still a lot more efficient than Cooper Flagg settling for jumpers.
Mhm.
And all of this is still very unfair to him, it being so early and him doing so much on both sides of the ball. I
Yeah.
just, I am trying in my mind to, like, leave the hyper efficient wing comps just away.
Yeah.
I like, if there's anything, because I don't want to be too down on the scoring efficiency, but I have to acknowledge it.
Mhm.
And 50 true shooting is, like, not good. You know, like, if you want to go to a Montverde guy whose true shooting is really good, that was Cooper Flagg's teammate, go check out Derek Queen and what he's doing in Maryland.
He if he looks like center one right now, right? Queen, he's pretty
That
unbelievable.
is a guy who one-on-one will bust you up. And
Yeah.
I'll get to him whenever I do that conference. But
Mhm.
I love Derek. You know, that it, like, and
He's awesome.
it's hard to ignore the difference in offensive efficiency between those two guys, and which
Mhm.
one can you imagine more easily operating an NBA offense as, like, a top two option. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I could actually see it for both. Queen definitely has like a body type and skill set that's like, and he's older. That's
He
more
is
likely
older,
to
like
like
almost
that's
2
more
years
like
older, isn't
yeah.
he?
So
Yeah, yeah.
he's much more, and he's in good shape this season for Maryland. Like he is a again he has a skill set. I'm stating the obvious, but like he's set up to dominate in the college game because like he
Hmm.
can also just like mash dudes in the post and stuff like that. Like Cooper, he's got like a post up game, but it's like it's not quite the same. It's not the same thing, obviously.
Right, right. His post up game is like, after a couple power dribbles, can I do a drop step or, like, lean over
Yeah.
you and just
Yes.
sort of, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So we talked about didn't we share a list of like 20 players before the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll try to get to them.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about, I guess, Khan or Maluach? You've mentioned Sion James a couple times.
Mhm.
Any about them for their pro prospects? How do you feel about Khan versus, like, McCain last
Yeah.
year, for
Yeah.
example?
Khan just has this like undeniable, like he's 6'6", 6'7", 215 pounds. Like he's got this, and McCain was obviously is kind of a tank too, but Khan's just like size and length, and his ability to like make plays with the ball in a
Hmm.
variety of different ways. He's a really interesting like off-ball mover guy because of his size too, and that opens up certainly like different kinds of finishes he can get to, different kinds of passes he can make. He's like a very willing passer. I think he and Flagg have like really nice um, synergy together, like working with one another as like sort of like passing hubs back and
Hmm.
forth. He knows to look for Maluach on the lob. Like he's got it drilled in his head. Like when I curl the screen, if there are two guys if I curl the pin down, there's two guys on the ball. I'm throwing it up. Like he's going to throw the lob up. Um, Obviously, he hasn't
Yeah, do
shot
I
the
have,
ball.
3.5 assists to turnover ratio for a
Yeah,
freshman?
yeah, he's
It's no
crazy,
joke. Yeah.
and also like as much as teams are like loading up on Cooper, you know what I mean, like switching and gapping up. I really think teams are identifying Khan and his movement, so similar to McCain last season, as sort of like the thing that gives Duke juice in the half court. Because like Khan coming off the screens is the thing that like bends the defense and gets them rotating. And so we've seen several teams that have sort of like keyed their defensive strategy to be trying to like make his catches coming off the screens cloudy.
Hmm.
Um, it literally in Incarnate Word was having guys, they were running, Duke was running Khan off of staggered screens in the middle of the floor, and Incarnate Word was having the low man weak side defender from the corner X out and switch up, so that when Khan came off the screen there was someone right there against him that wasn't being screened by the play. Really interesting strategy. But like that's fine with Khan because then he can just pass, and
Yeah.
he's a super strong and patient driver. um I love his offensive game. I think it's like he's ready. He has the chance to be like a very, very useful offensive player on the NBA because he doesn't need the ball to make a difference. He's willing to set screens, run off screens. He can pass. I know he's not shooting like an amazing percentage from three, but he's clearly a big time shooter. Like
Hmm.
it's very obvious. And there are plenty of I think he's at 95% from the line too. Like
Yeah,
he's
he's
he
missed
out
one free throw,
yeah,
20 of
he's
21. Yeah.
outstanding shooter. He can shoot. He can really shoot the thing. My gripes with him are just like defensively, and like I feel um it's helpful that he is like I had my defensive gripes with McCain too.
Me
Con
too.
is Con is just, but I was also like in on McCain too, and I feel I hope I hope he gets healthy. That his injury was a big bummer. He's having a nice season. Khan's size helps him on that side of the floor, but like he is like sort of a target because he's a little
Hmm.
slow laterally. He gets stuck on screens. Um, he has trouble chasing guys off of off ball screens. He'll get caught on the wrong side. He'll fail to catch up. He'll lose contact with the guy that he's chasing around screens. And if you go back and watch the Kentucky game, like when Kentucky was dicing up Duke late in the game in the half court, they're running these little like 5 out sets, and they're running on the sides. They're having their guards interchange and screen and split cut and slip to the rim and all those things. And he got lost multiple times, which is something that Jared did early in his career at Duke a lot too. So um, for me with Khan, I like him as like a like secondary creator, shooter, just super scalable offensive player. Defensively, I've got a lot of concerns, but if he could just be in the right place more often off the ball, that plus his size would to me would make him like passable enough on that end and therefore playable with his shooting and skill. And given how much the league puts a premium on that kind of stuff, I'm not surprised that like he's also vaulted pretty highly up draft boards in the
Yeah.
last month and a half.
You keep mentioning his size. How big do you think he is? You've seen him up close. How
I've
big do you
seen
think
him.
he is?
I think he is. So they list him at 6'6", or they list him at 6'7". I bet he's 6'5" and a half, 6'6" would be my guess. I would
You
say
think so?
somewhere around there. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, if he has that amount of size, then I'm more bullish on him as well. I really, after watching a few games, I like Khan a lot too. Very
Mhm.
clever player. Like the sort of old coach speak is like you're always comfortable when the ball is in his hands. You'd like,
Mhm.
but having said that, um, what made McCain and why he was, possibly the leader in the clubhouse for rookie of the year before this terrible knee injury is that I thought that McCain was like every bit the shooter that Reed Shepard was. I thought as a shooting prospect, that
Yeah,
dude was top
agreed.
of the draft. Like
Ridiculous shooter.
like
Lights
at,
out. Yeah.
at the range he had as a freshman and how quick that trigger was and the fact that he could get his feet set so easily, like he was, what was he, 42% on 10 plus threes per
Yeah.
100
He's a
and
sniper.
88% from the line. Like, so I I like Khan, I do, but
Mhm.
I want to see where those numbers end up. Like you mentioned, I think
Mhm.
he's a good shooter, but I want to see where they end up. Because if there's a step down from that, then you're sort of a good shooter, but with these defensive questions, as opposed to a top of the draft shooter
That's
who
fair.
can really weaponize NBA space,
Sure. I think he's made enough for me. I look at the other shooting like indicator numbers. He's made enough like tough shots, and also like McCain was like not at this point. By this point last season, McCain was humming, but like the first like 2 weeks of the season, he was like a little iffy, and
Hmm.
it was one of those things where like he was missing just good shots, and I kind of feel that way about Khan to an extent too. It's like I could also see him have a like 6 game stretch, you know what I mean, where he hits
There's like
52%.
60%
Yeah,
from three.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
and just all of a sudden it like
Sure.
changes your perception of him as a shooter. But he's also like he's asked to do even more ball handling than Jared was. You know what I mean?
I
Which is like
agree. Yeah.
a little hard to believe, but like it's kind of true. Like he's much more involved in terms of like a distributor in Duke's offense.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool. And do you believe, I mean, currently Maluach is still like whatever, top 20 on mocks and everything like that.
Yeah.
Do you believe that his role, because I mean, you're a Malik Brown guy, do you
Mhm.
think that Maluach's role in the Duke offense and defense is such that like his stock is going to stay steady or rise, or do you think it is likely to decrease because maybe he doesn't get the run that he was expecting?
I think it has the chance to, maybe it even has, dipped a little bit already. But I think there's still a pretty high floor for him
I do too.
because I still think he's going to end up being center, in the eyes of some, he's probably center one just because he has such much more defensive upside than a guy like Derek Queen, right?
Hmm.
Um, Obviously Derek, offensively is, far more impactful and skilled, but
Yeah. I'd like to see Maluach guard Derek Queen.
it would
You
be
know,
it would be interesting. I do
yeah.
think so. A couple of things from just like being around the team a little bit, like he's been like dinged up a little bit with injuries this season too. You see in a lot of these games, he's been wearing like a glove, like an offensive lineman like glove on his left hand that they've like
Hmm.
cut the fingers off on all the fingers slots of it off so he can like feel the ball with his fingertips. But like he's had like a thumb or a wrist thing bothering him this season. He had the game against, it was either Kentucky or Kansas where he got the cramp and
I don't
also got
remember that, which
he
one
also
that was.
he cramped out and also like he got rolled up on a little bit. I don't think he's been, just from watching him up close, I don't think he's been moving around as well, honestly, as he was early in the season. He had a good game against Incarnate Word the other last week, but given the competition and sort of like his size advantage, it really wasn't like that. Malik Brown didn't play in the game because he's dealing with a toe injury. So Khaman
Hmm.
got to like rock out and play a bunch of minutes. That was maybe good for him. Um, I think I still like him a lot. He's still very young. He's if he's 18, he just turned 18.
You want to know some fun facts about Come On?
Sure.
This is very
Yeah.
basic, small sample fun facts.
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier he's only taken three threes, and he made one of them, whatever.
Yeah.
From two, he is 32 of 39, which speaks to small sample, like he's cleaning stuff
Yeah.
up, but that is 82% from two.
Yeah.
And he's 13 of 16 from the line, which is what will get a lot of scouts salivating. That is
Yeah.
obviously still very small
Mhm.
sample size, but everyone is looking for a center to help them space the floor if it
And
all,
protect the rim on the other side too,
of
right?
course, if you're
You know,
7'2".
and
Now,
he is gigantic. It's comical how tall he is. It's
so
legitimately comical how tall he is.
my fun trivia question, if you don't know it, is I want you to throw out a number. He has like 12 or 14 usage, very small. But just for fun, what do you think Duke's offensive rating is with him on the floor?
One, ooh, should know this. One, 1.3.
130, you're saying
Yeah,
130?
130. Yeah, 130.
A valid, honorable guess.
Yeah.
Their offensive rating with Khaman Maluach on the floor is 159.3.
Jesus.
Which,
Yeah.
like, look, in looking at all these prospects, 130 is really when you're like, man, this is cooking.
Mhm.
But there are guys that hit that every year. I think
I
Reed Shepard was like 137 last year. Um,
having
159 is the highest I've ever seen,
yeah.
for anyone I'm looking at as a draft prospect. So I'm like, even if
His
Malawach has been quieter, what he has done has been pretty good, even if it's been small sample.
What I will say is even for a guy who has that low usage rate and really is like if he's finishing it's off a lob. But it's like that is still a very useful,
Yeah,
it's still a very like having
people
got
commit
it.
to it. Yeah,
And he
absolutely.
he doesn't ask for a single post touch, right? Like he's got the Mark Williams, like I'm and Derek Lively, like I'm happy to just set screens and hit the glass. And Duke has done a very good job, I would say, emphasizing him as a pressure point on the rim.
Hmm.
And they look for, especially when he sets the baseline like curls for Khan, like he's, as soon as he sets that screen, he's breaking out for the rim and he's looking for the lob. And Duke is, again, they've really, like I've heard multiple times, either John Shire's mentioned this after the game or I've heard him talk about this. Like, it's one of those things, like it should be an automatic for Cooper and Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster. If they have two on the ball and Khaman's rolling to the rim, throw that up. Like something's gonna happen, kind of. You know what I mean? Like so if you have that pressure point on the rim, that can then open up all of the other good stuff you can have, right? That can open up the kickouts, that can open up the driving lanes, the putbacks that equals free throws, like all of these good things around. Um, I would also say too, this is a little bit more like intangibly, but just like Khaman is a talker defensively. And like in a way that like um
I'm,
he doesn't he doesn't
go
remind
ahead.
he
I think
doesn't
I have the same thing in my head. Go
yeah,
ahead.
he doesn't remind me like physically he's not Derek Lively. And we should probably like
I just
I actually and
knew
so
you were going there.
but
Yeah.
the point I wanted to make is that I thought about this earlier today, knowing that I was coming on here to talk about him. I think Lively is the kind of guy we need to throw out in terms of like physical comps because there just aren't many guys that size that are like that
There's not many
laterally
7'1" with 7'7" wingspan who can switch on to anybody.
switch, laterally smooth, fly in the rim. It was like that's why it was so frustrating when like people were like mad that he wasn't like Abdul Jabbar. His like freshman, it was like he's not that. He's like super. He's like modern, Tyson Chandler is like what this
Right.
guy is, and I mean he's been unbelievably impactful and a very good pro so far, and he's only getting better. Um, Khaman reminds me a little bit more of like Mark Williams, like from a development standpoint, like laterally not
Interesting.
quite as polished, enormous, incredible wingspan, standing reach.
Mark also very efficient offensively. Arguably
Exactly.
better offensive player when he was a Duke than defensive.
And yeah, and really it was late in his freshman season, that ACC tournament game against Louisville. He got cooking and then it carried over into his sophomore season at Duke.
And that
And
was
so
the Palo team,
yeah,
correct?
that was
Yeah.
Paolo, AJ Griffin,
Right.
Wendell Moore, Keels, Jeremy Roach. But yeah, they were probably better like in terms of like points per possession when Theo John was on the court from a defensive efficiency standpoint
Hmm.
season, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe that was one of the things I used in my case for why Reese Beekman should have been ACC Defensive Player of the Year
Of
in
course.
2022.
Who can forget?
The year that Marcus Smart won it in the NBA, like I was fighting my own battles here in the southeast of the United States. But obviously
Shout out to Reese. Shout out to Reese.
Mark a very impactful defender too. But yes, so like come on, and then defensively, the communication part of it I think is really impressive because that's something that like every team in the country emphasizes. Duke is really looking for guys to talk, but like if you're sitting courtside watching Khaman anchor a defense, he is barking everything out. And so there's part of him, and this is one of the reasons
Which
why
shows a
like
lot of confidence too for a kid to grow up in the United States. So
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And like is pretty new. It's been playing basketball for like 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Like he's pretty new to the game. He was a soccer player for most of his youth. And um so to see him sort of like leaning into that already, and I just mentioned Theo John. Like Theo John is basically joined Duke's staff temporarily as he recovers from an injury. And they basically got him in there to like try to like help toughen up Khaman Maluach too, and get him to focus on the physicality of his game. And I would just say like he really wants to be good defensively. And if you ask Khaman a question about basketball, he's going to start with defense. He's going to start
Mhm.
with rebounding. The offensive stuff is like part of it, obviously, but like he really wants to be like an enforcer and an anchor defensively, and he certainly has like the tools to do it. So I'd like for him to get like a little bit more smooth laterally. I'd like for them to kind of figure out what they want his coverage to be defensively. He's been sort of like all over the place, whether he's at the level or he's in the drop or it's a deeper drop or he's switching out. I kind of like for them to give him like, hey, this is what we're doing. Where you were in, I wish they would put him in drop coverage, is what I want them to do.
Yeah. I would think if they had him, show or touch and then get back. I mean, that's different than a traditional drop. But I think he could be
Yeah,
good either way, you
there's a
know.
lot of stuff you can do with him, and I get wanting to be versatile on that end, and like he can do different coverages, which is like another feather in his cap, honestly, in terms of his defensive upside. So I think he has the ability to like dip a little bit, but I just think given the position he plays, you mentioned that offensive number, the discrete set of skills that he provides, the the small possibility that he can give you a little bit of stretch down the line. So very, very impressive prospect. But yeah, I'm not surprised that like he's I do think some of the like the excitement on him coming into the season was like, oh my God, he played in the Olympics. And everyone remembered the South Sudan game against the United States before the Olympics.
Right,
He
right,
played
right.
pretty well in, you know what I mean? So um I like him a lot, but yeah, offensively, he's just raw, and like that is one of the things that gives Malik Brown like an edge in terms of like a John Shire sort of like trust
Mm.
standpoint, you know?
Sure, sure. And you also want, you can't develop everyone all at once. The priority should be go with the option that is probably best for Cooper. And you
Mhm.
probably, if, I think that offensive rating aside, you probably want another decision maker out there, like a confident
Yeah.
decision maker like Malik out there to help try to set up Cooper rather
Mhm.
than giving Cooper the responsibility of helping to set up
Yeah,
Maluach,
every decision.
even if that vertical lob is always there and drawing gravity.
And those two do have like the Cooper Khaman pick and roll has been potent. I mean, no
I'm,
surprise. You would expect,
I mean, all that
two
size,
very
all
good
that
players.
ground
Yeah.
coverage,
Yeah.
like, sure,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's really encouraging.
Mhm.
It's something for them to figure out.
Yeah.
I agree that it's important. I'm glad that you illustrated the differences between Lively and Malawach. But Lively, I think, virtually ensures that Malawach is going to stay in the draft, go and get drafted pretty high. That is a Derek Lively is going to get me paid, even though I only average, 6 to 7 points a game, because that's
Mhm.
all that Lively averaged. And, look at that. And I'm
Yeah.
for that. I want Khaman to get paid. That's awesome. But it
Yeah.
it does not mean that they are one and the same. Though I'm
Yeah.
sure that Kaman's agency will point to probably the difference in free throw percentage because Lively was
Mhm.
thought of as possibly a shooter and shot, 55% from the line or whatever it was. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Cool.
Thank you all
Yeah.
very much for listening. Brian Geisinger at bgeis_bird. What's your Blue Sky handle? Because mine is Chucking Darts NBA.
Okay,
Shouts to Blue
hold on. Let
Sky.
me let me pull let
You're
me pull
active on there. You
I'm
post on there a
I'm
decent
becoming
amount.
more and more active on there. Yes. Yeah, at bgeisinger.bsky.social. Would love for there to become like a draft blue sky contingent. That seems to be slowly developing, but I'd like to
I
see
agree.
more of our brothers.
Since I don't pay for a blue check, I might as well get on the ground floor of Blue Skies.
It's kind of nice. It's kind of
Yeah.
nice over there. So, but I'm doing the thing where like I annoyingly toggle back and forth between the two. So
I
I'm
know.
now
We're all
now
figuring it out.
I'm spending more time on social media, which is a problem. But
Yeah.
Blue Sky's nice, and would love to see more friendly faces over there.
There you go. Brian Geisinger, Substack, 24/7 freelance. All your work. Thank you so much. Thank you all very much for listening. This has been Chucking Darts. It's okay to be wrong about sports. Find your dartboard and start chucking. Thank you.